I'm going to take a little bit of time today to share with you some of my story. It was on my heart to do so, and my hope for it is that it will bring you courage and hope and reassurance. Because if the Lord is with me and faithful to me, then surely He is with you and faithful to you as well. So, just a little bit of my testimony, my story of what the Lord's done in my life. I got married pretty young. I was 20 years old when Jamie and I got married. And he was in the military, so we spent the first 6 years without a lot of options in terms of where we were going to live and kind of what the general framework of our life was going to look like in that way. We went through some pretty rough times where it was pretty dire for a little while in terms of our relationship, but came through that, and about 5 years into it, which is where I'm really going to pick up my story, things were looking really good. There was a lot of hope and healing that had happened between us, and we were anticipating a really bright future. Now, I will just tell you that I had not envisioned, growing up, that I was going to get married so young, or that my life was going to look the way that it had. Another thing that I had never really envisioned in my life was children, other than maybe like a vague, I might have kids someday, but it just wasn't something that I really thought about or dreamed of. In fact, if you would have pressed me when I was younger for what my dream life as an adult would have been like, it would have been me living in a city with a glamorous job of sorts, perhaps being married, perhaps not, and kids really weren't in that picture. But here I am. I'm about 25 at this point. Jamie and I are married. We're living in Germany, and our future is looking bright. And the Lord is with us. He's been so faithful to us. And I hear the Lord begin to say to my heart, I want you to trust me. And I would say, Lord, I do trust you. I want you to trust me. I'd go and have my quiet time in the morning, and every day I was just hearing him say, I want you to trust me. And I was thinking, Lord, you've been so good to me. Of course I trust you. And then one morning, he made it clear that he wasn't just talking about generally, but he was being very specific that he wanted me to trust him in regards to having kids, to children. And immediately I knew that I did not trust him, and I did not have any interest in trusting him in that area because I had no desire at that moment to have children. I didn't think it was a good idea. It wasn't something I'd been through this traumatic time in my life, and things were looking good, and I didn't want to begin to ponder that. So I came up with this brilliant plan. I knew that Jamie wanted to have kids someday. In fact, I think I had a fear in my heart that that may be a place of conflict for us down the road, because he had mentioned to me before wanting a large family, and I really didn't see that in the cards. But I felt like that was something that was still far off. I didn't think that it was anything that he was thinking about in that time, in that season. And so I came up with this brilliant plan that I would go to Jamie and I would talk to him about what I felt like the Lord was putting on my heart, what he was speaking to me about. And Jamie would get me off the hook by telling me that he was not ready to have kids. And so this would be a win-win. I could be obedient to the Lord and still get my way. Like, what could go wrong? Well, I'll tell you what could go wrong. What could go wrong is that my loving husband could betray me, which is what he did, although obviously it wasn't really a betrayal. But when I had the conversation with him, he immediately just said, I know, this is the time. I've been ready for a while. I've just been waiting for you to be ready. And I was shocked. And I was not ready. And so I just quickly said, I'm not ready. I need more time to pray about it. And he said, go ahead, take your time. So within not too much longer, I had finally surrendered, because I knew that the Lord was asking this of me, and there was a mounting pressure. Am I going to trust him? Am I going to follow him? Like, what am I going to do? And I had told him already I would follow him anywhere. So how could I say no? Like, I had already said yes. He had tricked me. And so it wasn't too much longer until I did surrender to the Lord. However, it was without any joy at all. It was with fear and trembling. I surrendered in the way that you go, okay, I'll do this. You're asking me to do this, but you're going to realize later it was a mistake. You know, I'll follow you to my death, but I'll follow you. It was that type of attitude that was in my heart. So fast forward, when I did find out I was pregnant, you might be surprised to know that I was actually filled with great joy. I knew that the Lord was up to something, either that he was changing me, that he knew me more than I did, or probably a combination of both of those things. And so I had great joy when I did become pregnant. I still didn't have confidence in what motherhood would look like, but I was excited for the journey. So I won't get into all the details. I've shared this before. I'm sure I'll share it again. But, you know, long story short, Jamie and I have 8 beautiful, amazing, wonderful kids that I love more than I knew was possible. Our journey has been so beautiful, and the Lord has been so faithful. At the same time, we have lost quite a few children through miscarriage. Some of them pretty early on, some of them a little later on, and they have, you know, run the gamut. Some of them have been physically very traumatic. All of them have been emotionally traumatic to some degree or another. But suffice to say, it hasn't always been an easy journey. But the Lord has continued to say, I want you to trust me. I want you to trust me. And he has been so good and so beautifully faithful in our journey that I have a hard time expressing it with words. But it isn't just being a mom that is my story. There are other parts of my life as well, and parts of my story I want to share with you quickly. And one of those is homeschooling. So my first pregnancy, I'm in Germany. We're nearing the end of our time there, and I'm pregnant. And the Lord, I feel like he's been talking to me about children. He begins to speak to me about homeschooling and maybe having a large family. In fact, I think he even began to speak to me about those things even before I got pregnant. And I didn't understand. I just knew that it was the Lord. And I would write those things in my journal, in my prayer journal. I was kind of keeping track, but I didn't have a grid. I didn't have understanding. I certainly wasn't excited about the thought of having a large family. And I certainly wasn't signing up to be a homeschooling mom. Because to be quite honest with you, my only experiences with homeschooling families up to that point, which were very limited, but they were not positive. They were not how I dreamed of having my family be one day. Now, I'm sure some of that was because of my own immaturity, but some of it also is just that it was, we were just different personality styles. It just wasn't my thing. And so I had no grid for it. Plus, I come from a family that has a lot of public school teachers in it, including my own parents, who both taught in public school. They're retired now, but they both taught over 30 years in public school system, and I saw the impact that they had on kids' lives and the passion and, just all of the effort that they put into their teaching over the years. And I just thought, how is that going to go over if I go home and say, hey, by the way, I'm not sending my kids to school. It's not good enough for them, or, whatever. Which, side note, my parents have been amazingly supportive. And I do have other cousins that homeschool as well. And so it's a lot of fun in our family. But anyway, that's beside the point. But the point is that I had a lot of fears and I had a lot of reasons that I didn't think this was a good idea. And I didn't have any understanding of it. So we're ending our time in Germany, and we end up, our next place is North Carolina, is where Jamie is stationed. It wasn't what we would have chosen, by the way. We were trying to go to Arizona. I had family in Arizona. There was a school there that we thought would be great for Jamie to finish up his degree. And so we were set for Arizona. Jamie had been doing back-to-back overseas tours, so we kind of just figured that he would get his choice, and he did not. He ended up in North Carolina, which at first we didn't understand, but it soon became apparent that this was actually the Lord's great kindness to us. There were so many amazingly wonderful things that happened during our time in North Carolina, in both our hearts and in our relationship and our lives. We got connected to an amazing church, and the Lord just did some great things in us. But one of them was that he also connected us to a family that is still dear to our hearts, the Halloran family. Chris, the dad, was on staff at the church that we were a part of, and they were a homeschooling family of 8 kids. And the first time that we went over to their house, we, were still new. It was early on our time in North Carolina, and they had graciously invited us over for a meal. And Jamie had met Chris at a men's event. I hadn't met any of them. He told me they had 8 kids, and so I don't know what I was expecting, but it was not what it was like. It was so amazing. We spent time with this family, we had this meal together, and their kids were awesome. And their house was full of life and love and joy and laughter and peace. There was a lot of activity and busyness because there's a lot of people, but it was amazing. And the Lord, through that experience, just told me, again, trust me. And I realized that there were things that I didn't know that the Lord had been speaking to me about, but I didn't understand because I didn't have a grid for them. And thankfully, this amazing family, who we are still indebted to this day, kind of adopted us in for our time in North Carolina, and we got to spend time with them. We had meals, we played games, we played kickball with them. Sue invited me one day just to come and experience what a day at their house homeschooling was like, so I kind of got to have a grid around that, and it was just a really wonderful blessing. So this encounter, this family, this relationship, helped me to begin to have a grid and an understanding of what family, a large homeschooling family, could look like. However, there was still a long way ahead in my journey. So after North Carolina, we ended up back in Minnesota, and it's not the point of our story, but I'm just going to say that we had not come back to Minnesota thinking we were going to stay here and plant a church here. But you fast forward, and here we are, and we have, we had 1 child when we first came back temporarily, and now here we are where we have 8 kids. We are pastors of a church that we planted that is amazing. I'm a pastor's wife, but also a pastor on staff there. We are currently leading the church the best we can in the midst of a pandemic and social and political upheaval and, all kinds of craziness. We're still a homeschooling family as well. Like, the point is that this isn't necessarily what we planned. I don't know if anybody could have planned or foreseen this. But the Lord has been faithful, so amazingly faithful to me every step of the journey. To be honest, and this isn't a very well-kept secret because I'm pretty open about it, but I don't feel like I'm an expert in any area of my life. I don't feel fully qualified or like I really confidently know what I'm doing in any of it. But the confidence that I have is that the Lord is with me, that He has chosen me for the life that I have, that He has given the opportunities to me that are in front of me, and so that whatever it is that He sees in me to put me in this place, that I can trust Him, because not only does He see me better than I see myself, He also changes me, He transforms me, He equips me, and He gives me grace every single day for what's in front of me. He made me this promise years ago, that there was never going to be more things to do, or there was never going to be more in my life that there was grace for. Like, there's going to be grace enough every single day. And that is a promise that I have brought to Him time and time again. So when I am feeling stressed out, when I am feeling overwhelmed, when I am panicking because I don't know what to do, or because things just seem too much, then what I do is I stop. Even if I'm in the midst of chaos, I stop and I go before the Lord and I say, Lord, you promised there would be grace. I need grace right now. And it's amazing how the Lord meets me. Now, sometimes there's a process, because sometimes the reason that I'm feeling overwhelmed or stressed out is because I have the wrong mindset and the Lord's having to correct it. And so he's bringing me through a process. Or sometimes I'm feeling stressed out and worried because I've picked up something that isn't for me to carry. And so I'm trying to do something that I'm not supposed to do. And so of course there's stress around it. You know, sometimes there's stress just because there's stressful moments. You know, we had this over the last holiday season. Our youngest was pretty sick for a while, and that was a little bit scary for a moment. That can be stressful, you know. And so in those moments of fear, it's so important to go to the Lord and go, Lord, I know you're with me. I'm not going to be afraid right now. I'm going to trust you, and to allow him to give you wisdom and to give you peace in those moments, because he is so much more faithful than you know. So what I've learned in my journey is that I can have confidence and I can have courage, that I can continue to move forward because the Lord is so good to me, that even when I make mistakes, he is patient and he is kind. He walks with me. Sometimes there's consequences, but he walks with me in the midst of those consequences. I've also learned that the Lord really does have plans that are better than mine. So it isn't that I don't dream about things or I don't set goals or anything like that, but it's that I can trust the Lord as he leads me every single day. Sometimes I don't see the full picture, and that's okay. I don't have to. In fact, I don't know if I ever see the full picture. I don't know if I have understanding of my life yet. But I have walked with the Lord enough to know that he is faithful and the place that he's bringing me is good. That it's better than what I would choose on my own. That it's better than the place I would get to if I was left to my own devices. But instead, he will faithfully teach me. He will correct me. He will guide me. He will bring me grace. He will do supernatural miracles to bring me to the place that he is leading me, because he's a good father. So if the Lord is with me like this, I want you to know that he is also with you. He loves you so much more than you know. So I don't know what you're facing right now. I don't know if you're facing a school year with kids that are going to be half at school and half at home. I don't know if, you know, in the spring, if that was a good experience or a bad experience for you. And so what kind of feelings that you may have going into it. I don't know if you're looking at homeschooling for the very first time and feeling a little overwhelmed, or maybe this doesn't have anything to do with, you know, family or homeschooling at all. Maybe it has to do with a relationship or job worries, or maybe it's the general stress of this moment in the world and all the upheaval and things that are happening. Maybe you have had loved ones, or you yourself have been sick during this time. You know, maybe there's economic stress. I don't know what it is. But what I want to have you take away from my story is that there is grace in this moment for whatever you need, that the Lord is actually with you. He is faithful. He is good. And if you are feeling overwhelmed, if you're feeling stressed out, I want you to stop and I want you to connect your heart to his. Ask him for courage. Ask him for grace. Ask him for wisdom. The only trick to this is that you have to actually be open to receiving it. And sometimes in receiving it, he's going to lead you in a direction that you wouldn't have chosen. He's going to bring you through a process that seems intimidating or scary. He's going to bring you into a place that you don't feel prepared for, or that wasn't what you planned. Don't let that deter you. Instead, have courage, because he is with you and he is bringing you into someplace good. He is faithful. He is true. You can take him at his word. So, my friends, I hope this encourages you today. I don't know what your future holds, but the Lord does. He is not surprised by where you're at. He knows exactly where you need to get, and he is the expert at getting you there. So take courage, find hope, have confidence, be reassured today, because the Lord surely is with you and He is more faithful than you know.